This is Community Theater in Middletown, and I'm the interviewer, Ed Strother, and today I'm talking with Clyde Thornburg. Today's date is August 5th, 1985, and the time is about 1:15, and we are seated here in the office of Clyde Thornburg at his studio on West Jackson. And for any of a number of reasons, we wanted to interview Clyde because he was the first representative of Muncie, Indiana, to be elected president of the Indiana Community Theater League. But before we get into that, let's find a note or two about the personal life of Clyde Thornburg, photographer. Clyde, you've lived most of your life in Muncie. Moving into Muncie, in what year or on what occasion?
Well, I was born in 1931, so I assume, I think my folks moved here about 32, 33 then.
You were born the very year Muncie Civic Theatre was created.
Right.
And so all but about a year and a half you've lived here in Muncie.
Right.
You graduated from where?
Graduated from Royerton High School, which is a county school north of town.
Did you spend all your school life there?
Yeah, all 12 years.
Okay. Following graduation from Royerton, what did you do?
Oh, what all good county boys did then. Got married and looked for a job in the factory and had babies. Kept one baby ahead of the selective service system during the Korean War. Mm-hmm. And every time they would reclassify me back down to 1A, I would find out that my wife was pregnant again. So for that reason, I missed the Korean War.
What kinds of jobs did you have, Clyde?
Oh, goodness. I, of course, started, at the time I first got out of school, I got a job at the Indiana Glass Company up at Dunkirk, which is a town I was born in. And so we had some family connections and friends up there. But then got back to Muncie. And I was fortunate enough about the next year to get on at Warner Gear. And I guess my artistic precision ability showed through, and they taught me precision grinding, which I acquired an A rate. And so I did, at various times when I was not working at Warner Gear or laid off for various reasons, I did precision grinding at Chevrolet Muncie and Precision Tool and Die, and a couple places like that. Mm-hmm. Old Muncie Gear, did grinding there.
Well, somewhere along the way you had to pick up photography.
I had my best buddy in high school got interested in photography, and his parents could afford to get him a larger and some equipment, and we set it up on his old farmhouse in a summer kitchen. And I learned a little bit about it. I couldn't afford anything but a snapshot camera. But I learned the very simple mechanics of making a picture. Of course, I had an artistic background. My father was a watercolor artist, so I grew up with an artistic background and a sense of artistic expression. But it was in 1953, I think, that I found myself looking for a job again. And in assessing what I knew, it crossed my mind that I knew how to make a picture. I think at that time I had saved up a little money and had bought myself a better camera. So I checked around at some studios, and one local studio asked me about if I'd taken any children's pictures. I did I said, well, my own. And he wanted to see them. This was in the spring of '54, I guess. I remember now. Because he put me on the road, so to speak, as a kidnapper. The old door-to-door photography beat, I worked with a woman who was known as a caller, and she would we'd pull into a neighborhood and stop at a corner, and she would head down the street knocking on doors and tell them to wash their kids up and put some clean clothes on him, and the photographer would be along in 15, 20 minutes. And it was all done on speculation. And So my first stint in photography was as a kidnapper. And during that summer, I photographed about 2,000 children from spring till fall.
Was that here in Muncie?
That was here in Muncie. Well, we photographed all of Muncie and Winchester and Hartford City and Union City and all the little towns in between here. But it was quite an education.
Well, you worked for the Star Press, though.
That fall, there was an opening at the newspaper, and I somehow became aware of it, and I applied for it and got the job. So I worked, was staff photographer to Muncie newspapers from fall of '54 until fall of '57.
Right.
Or maybe it was spring of '55, I guess. Yeah, I worked through that winter in the dark room of the other studio. It was spring of '55, and I worked till fall of '57.
And it was after that, you started your own private studio.
I started my own business.
It seems to me most of the time you've been right here on Jackson Street.
Yes, I really have. When I quit the newspaper, I was operating from a house right beside Brookies Drive-In.
Yeah.
In fall of '57. And then the next year I moved around the corner behind what was then a Marsh food liner into a little building there. And I was there about a year and a half or so until I had a chance to move into the building here at 1801, where I was located for 17 years until I had the fire in 77.
Yeah.
70s. I get these decades all mixed up.
Well, let's get into theater. I know that one of my first experiences with you was when I asked you to come over to college and take pictures of a production there in Assembly Hall. I've forgotten what the production was, but I want to say Our Town.
It could possibly have been.
And
I remember doing some production pictures for Shoestring back in those early tent years too. I know I did. Al Rent graduated from high school, and I did some of the Burris anniversary or reunion pictures this last couple of years. He must have graduated about 58 or 59.
Yeah.
So along about 60 or 61. I know he was involved with a production over there in the tent, and I remember being called over, must have been about 1960, to do some production pictures of what was the name of the one he was in? The one that Frank Sinatra did. The hat and the coat over the shoulder.
I know the one you mean. Well, I could say Pal Joy, but I don't know that was it. Was that it?
I think that was it, yeah.
Well, I really don't know.
That was it.
Then I also recall working with you down at Civic Theatre, and that had to be one of your early experiences with Civic. That was the Children's Hour.
Yeah.
I think you were producer.
I produced the Children's Hour, and you directed it. Was that before or after we did, you and I worked together down there on
The Moon is Blue.
Moon is Blue.
Well, I think that was in 1970.
Was it that late?
I think.
Yeah. No, that was in 70, right. Yeah, I was in 70 because I walked into Civic Theatre in September 1969.
How did you happen to walk in? How did you get involved?
Oh, that's a very complex story that has a lot to do with getting my own life together, my own head together, so to speak. I was one of these persons that always used the excuse, I'd like to do this, but I don't have time. And people would say to me, why don't you come down to Civic Theatre and help us, I'd say, I'd love to, but I don't have time. And I had some experiences that summer that caused me to do some real looking at myself and looking at what we called then our cop-outs,
Right.
And I made up my mind that some of these things that I had been copping out on, I was going to do. And I just made the decision, come September, I was going down to Civic Theatre and just walk in and find out what I could do, which is, I walked in.
What could you do?
Yeah, Oh, yeah.
What did you do first?
First thing I did was worked on set decoration. They were doing Finian's Rainbow, and they were just ready, just finished casting, and was starting the production. And they said, "What can you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm an artist. I can paint." And they said, "Great." And they gave me some sketches and pointed me to the drops, told me where the paint was, and I went to work.
Do you recall who was producer of that show?
Probably Doug Belcher. I'm quite certain it was. I think Don and Darlene Austin, they may have been the producer, co-producers. I'm not for sure. I know I worked with them on the set painting.
Yeah.
But that very early year, I just don't remember the...
Well, Don did a lot of everything. I remember.
Yeah.
He worked a great deal on lights.
Right. He did.
And pulled some wire, set up a remote system.
Right. No, he did a lot of good work down there.
What was the first performance you were in at Civic? Do you recall?
The very next one. I got the fever, I guess, during Finian's Rainbow. And, of course, the night after it closed, they had tryouts for The Odd Couple.
Oh.
And I thought,
you're going to do it.
I'm going to do it. And I was very proud of that, because I think we must have had 30-some men on that stage down there reading for those roles. I mean, I think every man in Muncie.
Okay, what role did you do?
I did Felix.
Right. Who was the other character?
Fred Jordan.
Oh, well,
Fred
that would have
Jordan.
made a good team.
Yeah, did Oscar. Of course, now I want to go back and do it again, because now I want to do Oscar.
All right.
Uh,
Go the complete family or the complete setup there.
Well, I put on a few extra pounds.
Well, that was a good performance, I remember, and you got good reviews.
Yeah,
with that
oh yeah,
show.
yeah.
Okay, so you worked with Finian's Rainbow backstage first, and then you were in The Odd Couple. But apparently you stayed with Civic Theatre, and apparently you were quite a devotee of everything down there, because a little later on you were nominated for presidency of the Indiana Community Theater League. And that has to be really quite a memorable experience. Right now you may not put much importance to it, but...
I do. I really do. I'm very proud of that.
Well, the organization has grown over the years, as you no doubt know, and it has grown stronger. And I think during that year, a period of its reorganization, for you to be president, really ought to be considered something of a feather in your cap, I think. Can you, when you think of that particular year, is there anything you are, let us say, particularly proud about accomplishing, or is there anything you wish you had done but didn't?
Of course, we're going back 11
several years.
Yeah, we're going back 11, 12 years here.
Let's pin the date. When was that?
It was in 1974.
Okay.
I remember that. Although I think, I forget how the fiscal year with the ITL was at that time, when the elections were, because I think my term as president began in 73 and ended sometime in 74, and just what months I can't put my finger on. But we did work up a complete reorganization plan based on the idea of making the polity within, at that time it was ITL, Indiana Theater League, making it more in line with the community theater, the National Community Theater Organization, in order for us to become a, what they call it, subsidiary,
participating member of that
participating member. And in order to do that, we had to make some changes in our structure. The main thing that I wanted to accomplish that year, I felt that the way we were doing it at that point, there wasn't an equal or fair distribution of representation on our board and in the policy making of ITL. In other words, we would elect, we'd have a state convention, and we would elect directors from nominees. And, you know, if we had the state divided into groups, into sections, but there might not be a nominee from a section of the state on the board, elected to the board to represent the theaters in that area. And the thing that I tried to do was set up to where each area would automatically have a representative, so that everybody had a say-so in the policy making.
Well, that makes a great deal of sense. That right now is a very strong organization and a very very active, vigorous one.
That's what I hear. Now, I haven't been in communication with it much.
Well, this past March, we had the state meeting here. That is the Shorts Festival down at Muncie Civic. And I think attendance was better than it had been previously.
Yeah, what I heard, it went well.
Well, is there anything you didn't get done you wanted to get done during that particular time, Clyde?
Oh,
I'm sure if you had it to do over again, things would be a little different.
if you'd asked me the next day, I probably could have come up with
an answer to that question.
The answer to that question. To look back now in retrospect, it would be hard to look back. I think at the time, in thinking back, possibly, I think we accomplished what we wanted to accomplish. I think that has proven out, has proven to be beneficial. I think at the time there were some, in changing management, so to speak, or polity there were some bad feelings from some of the, on the part of some of the people who were running it, so to speak, before. It's kind of, I think they kind of felt that we were taking it from them and giving it to the people, which is really what we were doing.
Who are these upstarts coming in here changing everything?
Changing everything when, because up to that point, it had really been the baby of one man in Indianapolis, and much to his credit, I think it survived to that point, and it was viable because of his effort, which was great.
Who are you talking about
now? Alan Bowlesby.
All right.
Alan Bowlesby. And he worked night and day. But it was his. And in order for it to grow and become a state association, there had to be some changes made. Sure. And in all due respect.
Well, let's get back to Muncie again. What was the last performance you had with Muncie Civic Theatre, or the most recent one?
Well, I haven't done a role on stage, oh goodness, for several years, because after I finished my degree at Ball State then in '76, I got into directing, and the last several efforts with Muncie Civic have been directed, 3 or 4 shows over the last several years.
Do you recall the last one? The last one you directed?
Let's see. I did. Trying to remember the order. What was it? Janus, I think, was the last one I directed. I directed Janus. I directed Flea in Her Ear.
Well, these are both pretty tough shows.
Yeah.
But especially Flea in Her Ear.
Especially Flea in Her Ear. Oh, had a big cast on that.
Yeah.
The first directing job I did was Al and the Pussycat. We had a very good show there, good cast. I directed, another one down there, and I can't, two of, one of the things, when we had four of us, directed Four on a Garden.
Oh, yes.
But that,
I
it's just kind of
remember
a one act segment there, but I did something. And then, of course, I've directed 3 different productions up at Portland. I've helped them quite a bit. The last one, a year ago, I did The Rivals, which is quite a challenge, to go into a farm community
and do a classical.
And cast the rivals.
Yeah. Let me ask this. Of all your experiences with Civic Theater, what gave you the greatest sense of joy? What did you enjoy most?
The greatest sense of joy was working and being a part of Gypsy.
Were you in that cast?
Well, it's a toss-up between Gypsy and Music Man.
Right.
It'd be hard for me to say which is which.
But it's got to be a musical.
No, I think there is there are emotional things that go on with me. Why those two are highlights. I think it probably has a lot to do with the first time I walked in. I think it has a lot to do with Civic Theater being in the building they are in.
All
right. If I can be allowed to digress here and go back.
Sure.
When I was a child, I was a young teenager. I got fascinated with coming to town and going to movies. Everybody else came into town and went down to the Hoosier and watched westerns on Saturday afternoon, and I would go to the Rivoli and watch musicals. I was fascinated by, and of course the big genre at that time in musicals was the vaudeville. They recreated the vaudeville years, in movies, and and back before that, they made movies like the Dolly Sisters, and all of these movies of vaudeville and movies of stage musicals, and there was all of these action backstage, and it was almost, and I thought about this time and again when we get into conversations with people talking about reincarnation. When I walked on stage and backstage at Muncie Civic, from the very first time and still to this day, it's like I had been there before. It's like I was returning. And there is something about the Music Man. I was stage manager. Doug Belcher produced it, but I did all of the design and decoration and building, and was stage manager and everything. And from dress rehearsal on, I stood over there at those ropes, and I cried every night. And I still get, I get emotional remembering it and thinking about it. And so there's a whole lot of things going on with me, separate from what I physically did on the show.
You got emotionally and personally involved in it.
Yeah.
An interpersonal closeness
Right.
that you sense, and it gets to be very meaningful. Well, that's good to learn. But let me go to the opposite kind of question. And that is to say, when you think of Civic Theater, do you have any regrets about it? Are there things about Civic that you wish were otherwise? Everybody, I ask that question, Clyde, because everybody has talked to us. It just said, Civic is the greatest thing in the world, and nobody has indicated anything uncomplimentary or any problem spots. And if there are problem spots, we really ought to get at some of them.
Well, yes, I think there's a problem spot. I think there's And I think it developed almost by accident as we grew into, you know, the good old U.S. government come up with this, what's the name of this program where they paid our director for us? CETA program, and we qualified for it, and we got a CETA man in there. Now, we've had good men. We've had good people. But something changed down there when there was somebody hired and somebody there paid to do this work. Before, we were a totally equal family.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was an awful lot of mutual respect and mutual appreciation. And now I don't know if this all happened at that time. Now, whether this was a catalyst or not, yeah, I don't know. I've always felt that there had to be some kind of a catalyst, and I think this had something to do with it. Because Civic Theater has, to me, has changed very much since that time, and the one negative change that I sense, yeah, and feel, and I've talked with other people like, you know, dear late Ruthie Maddox and
yeah.
And many people like this, was that it jumped generations or something, and there was I don't know how to say it. It's like,
well, just a chemical change of
yeah,
some sort.
like the old fogies weren't needed anymore.
All right.
And up to a point there, we loved the old fogies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were a part of our total family.
That's right.
And we used to have the greatest. I can remember on some of the shows that we did, we'd have a Sunday afternoon carry-in up in the boardroom and sit up there and eat and sing and all ages. I mean, these were musical casts, you know,
right,
I mean, from little children to these, you know,
old fogies.
And we were a family, a really close family, because we were all totally equal. We were all, you know, there was, I don't know. No. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know whether it's imagined.
Well,
or
at any rate, I'm glad you mentioned it. It is something that ought to be made a matter of record. And it'll cause people, I think, to re-examine things down there.
I think that there's not enough respect for the people who have made and who could still be contributing to Civic Theater, but I think they feel that they're not wanted anymore.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hope you're wrong. And, well, we better sign off on that, I think. This is Ed Strother, and I've been talking with Clyde Thornburg on August 5th, 1985, in Clyde's studio on West Jackson Street.